This month's emotional check-in video honestly takes me back to middle school and high school. But today I'm going to be talking about when your mind is by default in a negative feedback loop. Honestly, I'm not even sure if that's an official psychological term. It is something that I made up to describe the situation that I was in, especially during that time in my life. Honestly, this is something that still bothers me occasionally to this day, but what has helped has been traveling outside of the area that I grew up in and getting out of my head. As a really introspective person, getting out of my head has been rather hard, but I do make a habit of thinking about anything else besides what I think about myself and my inner life. I think that in another lifetime, like if technology was not as advanced as it is now, I would have made a really good poet. These days, I cannot stay focused on just words because film is a thing, photography is a thing, technology is a thing. So I'm way too distracted to be a poet, but back in the day, I think that I would have made a fine poet because I'm so introspective all the time. Essentially, I did not fit in when I went into public school. From ages 6 to 9, I drew a lot of attention to myself without meaning to. I came across as weird and I was bullied considerably. That made me, when I was older, just kind of assume that people didn't get me and that people didn't want the same things in whether it was a relationship or a friendship or whatever. People just didn't want what I wanted. This was a habitual thinking process that I was caught in, and it led me to run away from people that I really liked. I assumed that I was different from a large majority of the population. Also, being an INFP or a dreamer made me think about some savior type person that would come into my life and somehow magically understand me. I thought that this person would get me and they were the only ones who could because I was so unique, because I was so different. It wasn't necessarily that I needed saving because I didn't really think that about myself. However, I knew that I was somehow different from most of the people in my hometown, and I wanted someone to break through my exterior and get me and see me for what I saw myself as. Ultimately, I didn't think that this was probable or even possible because at this point in my life, at least in high school, I understood my Myers-Briggs personality type, and that led me to a lot of self-understanding and self-acceptance, but it also led me to understanding that the INFP personality type is pretty rare. Before this point in my life, I was an introvert who did not know the meaning of the word introvert. I thought that something in me was broken until I understood that word. I realized that that was just my natural tendency, and it wasn't that I was shy, because shy people want to change. Shy people want to break out of their nervousness and socially interact. I realized that for me, I was drained in social interactions a lot, and it took a lot out of me, and I prefer being with a small group of people who I feel like get me or alone. Before I understood this definition of introvert, though, my personality was something that I was insecure about. I thought that, especially as a woman in the world, we are socialized to be social, to be hostesses. And I thought that there was something really wrong with me for not wanting to be bubbly all the time. I constantly compared myself to other girls who were bubbly. I constantly spent a lot of my free time as a preteen searching how to be some word that described some fashion style. Honestly, I thought that you could build your personality or your lifestyle around how you looked. I thought that being a part of a cultural movement based on fashion or outward appearances was important. I thought that it was sustainable when ultimately it's not. I think that this is something that a lot of people who are growing up now in the age of like loud social media that I wasn't necessarily a huge part of growing up. I think that that's a valuable lesson for them to learn. And maybe they will have similar experiences to what I had. For the most part, I do try to be optimistic about the future and about young people, while also realizing that I am still young, so it's not like I'm some senior citizen reminiscing about the good old days, because honestly, the good old days were not really good for that many people. However, I do love Y2K nostalgia. Something about it just seems like technology was a little bit more simple, but also a lot more intimidating for a lot more people. But something about that is dreamy. Technology and advertisements were not so invasive and in your face all the time, and FOMO wasn't as pervasive as it is now. I think that if I could put into words why Y2K is so nostalgic for me, that's a big part of it. But also, my generation was younger during that time. We didn't really understand everything about the world that adults need to know. So our viewpoint of that time is always going to be warped. And for a lot of people, it's going to be warped with a positive point of view that may or may not have been the most consistent or realistic point of view. For me, though, it was also a time when I felt very isolated. It was a time before I started exploring making connections through social media. Early on in high school, I finally jumped on social media, and I loved finding like-minded people who had similar perspectives to me, who happened to live far away, because I felt like I didn't fit in with my hometown. This validated my viewpoint, but it was also like traveling to another country without having to buy a plane ticket. It was really encouraging for me. It was a light at the end of some tunnel that was living in my hometown. A part of why I felt isolated was because I didn't fit in with the people around me, because I felt like I was misunderstood and therefore mistreated. And that was what developed the negative feedback loop in my head that just assumed that things were going to be awkward or people were going to misjudge me. So I ran away from a lot of relationships. This also extended to me always putting off creative projects that I really wanted to do internally, including be active on YouTube. YouTube has always been my one consistent dream job that I've always had, but I was afraid to expose myself online. I was afraid that I would be super awkward on camera, or no one would watch my videos, or only the people that I didn't want to watch my videos would be the people who ended up finding my channel. So I kept putting it off. Even in college, I put it off. What's helped me get through the negative feedback loop? Well, there's a few things that help, but there is no surefire cure. First is being direct with people when I want a friendship or a relationship with them, instead of just beating around the bush and looking for signs. You need to be vocal about what you want with other people. That way you can avoid misunderstandings and avoid sitting around waiting for something that may or may not actually happen. The second thing that I did was I went to college. People in college in a different town treat you differently. It doesn't matter who you were in high school, things are gonna be different in college. That honestly did help with my negative feedback loop, but again, it's not like a 100% cure. What's in your head is often stuck in your head, and it takes a lot of work to reframe your worldview. Finally, something that has helped me but might not help everyone is looking at statistics in general in life. Statistically, most people are going to have average lives. Most people don't win the lottery and get their dream job and meet a celebrity and have the celebrity fall instantly in love with them. That typically doesn't happen. Most people have highs and lows in life. Even if what they're posting on social media is only highlights, it doesn't matter. It's not 100% of their life. On that same token, though, most people also don't live in some tragedy movie all the time. Most people have ups and downs, good and bad. It's balancing both of these things that really counts. Rare tragedies can happen. So maybe don't look up the statistics of your worst nightmare, but statistically, 100 bad things are not going to happen to you every hour or every day or even every year. At least not 100 tragedies. So you should live life with the attitude that you won't get everything that you want all the time, but you can still strive to have a good life. Stay beautiful.